We're live.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome for joining Refinitiv webinar today. My name is Svetlana Malish. I am the Black Sea agriculture market analyst, and with the kind help of my colleague, Mr. Waship Mogida, we will run today a webinar titled Agriculture Outlook, First Results and Future Trends. Thank you again for joining. Before we will start actually the webinar, there are some few housekeeping points I would like to cover. First of all, at the bottom of the webinar screen, you should see a little toolbar. Use this toolbar to access a range of applications, such as technical support, webinar materials, speakers' biographies, if you need them. Please submit your questions throughout the webinar via the Q&A box, and we will try to answer this towards the end of the webinar, or we will write you an emails with our answers and views. For your best viewing experience, we recommend you to close any programs or browser sessions running in the background. This will help conserve your bandwidth. The webcast is being streamed through a computer. So for the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset volume is turned up. We value your feedback, so please do complete the pop-up survey when it occurs on your screen. So let's move further. Our webinar is titled Agriculture Outlook, First Results and Future Trends, and we understand that all people actually don't have a lot of time to sit before the screen and listen again to something that they already have listened, they heard. So today we will try to do our best, not to take a lot of your time, and we try to be precise and right to the point. So in respect of agriculture, we will cover today the supply and demand side. Supply side, we will speak a little about Black Sea region and European countries. We will speak about price trends and its developments. We will have a look at some results of the previous season, for example, for corn. And we will speak about first results of the new wheat season. So that's our plan for today. So let's start, and I will be the first person presenting my part. My part is devoted actually to the Black Sea region in the new 2020-21 season, expectations and reality. Before I start covering my topic, I would like to draw your attention who Refinitiv is, what we do. Actually, Worship and me, we are representing the Refinitiv Agriculture Research Team. And this team is covering quite a wide range of information for agriculture. First of all, we produce our own production estimates for main exporting and importing regions all over the world. On this map, you can see these regions and these crops. Also, we produce some price assessments for the Black Sea region, as Black Sea region is one of the most powerful market players on the grain market. So our task is to present information, including price assessments for Black Sea grains on a daily basis. Actually, I want to speak very long about Black Sea region. I'm sure you all understand how important Black Sea grain is for the global market and the global food security. There is a list of our price assessments, both for Russia and Ukraine. And if you would like to get more information about our price assessment, our production estimates, maybe some kind of trade flows or COVID pandemic impact on prices, production, and flows, you can always contact us. So let's speak about the expectations for the 2020-21 season. Actually, the expectations were rather favorable, and now I speak about wheat, because planting areas were rather big, especially for Russia, where we have the record areas under winter wheat. And rather mild weather in winter gave a lot of people hopes that wheat crop in the Black Sea region and also in European countries would be rather decent. But actually the situation was rapidly changed, and the reason is the weather. We see that situation in Russia is still rather favorable, because they are going to harvest around 80 million tons of wheat. But the situation in Ukraine is vice versa. Don't forget that last year was a record harvest, a record crop of wheat in Ukraine. And it's obviously we couldn't expect that the record would be repeated. So this spring, this year, they see that the situation that crop actually have been cut due to drought. Because there were some regions, especially in the south of Ukraine, where there have been no rains for at least 5 or 4 months, and actually some regions were a real disaster in respect of crop and yields figures. So you see that. If we speak about total sum about Russia and Ukraine, the overall number of wheat production is rather decent. It's on the 5 or 4 year average, but the prices are going up, and we can see that prices have been growing at least for the last month. And if we have quite good crop, actually, what are the reasons for prices to grow? Actually, there are some reasons, and let's explore them. First of all, I would like to mention that EU wheat crop this year was cut by over 20 million 20 million tons lower than last year. And combining with lower production estimates for Ukraine, that's actually a huge cut in supply side. Moreover, they see the strong foreign demand during the August and September. For example, Russia supplied 150 countries worldwide with its wheat last season. And since the start of the new season, Russian wheat have been already shipped to 112 countries. it's actually quite an impressive numbers. Moreover, Black Sea wheat, especially Russian wheat, is trying to enter new markets, new significant markets, like, for example, Saudi Arabia or Algeria. And this creates new additional demand. When we speak about Ukraine actually focused on strong interest to its wheat from South Asian countries like Indonesia or Philippines, which have been traditionally focused to our grains. And actually today we see a new rising star in respect of demand side, Pakistan. This country enters the market, creating additional demand and pushing prices higher. Moreover, in respect of demand, there were some tenders every week we see where between over million tons of wheat could be purchased, and significant volumes of Black Sea wheat will be added to new customers, to new buyers. For example, yesterday we saw Egypt government company GASC bought again 400,000 tons of Russian wheat. Actually, when we speak about a strong foreign demand, we couldn't avoid speaking about COVID-19 pandemic and buying spree. It looks like our world is going into the second wave into the pandemic. So a lot of buyers, a lot of consumers would like to stock up grains. They actually fear that situation may be worsen. But taking into consideration that in March and April, we've already seen the same buying spree, and the supply chain, especially from the Black Sea region, haven't been disrupted. And there is another reason for prices to go up. This is a strong demand from China, who is actively buying all grains, all commodities, starting from wheat, corn, soybean, and others. So the other reason for firm prices going up is strong origination costs. And you can see on the chart on the slide that purchasing prices, domestic prices, for example, for Russian wheat, have already grown significantly. And actually there is no any sign that this growth could be stopped. What is the reason for this? And actually, the same situation we see for Ukrainian wheat. If you have a look at the map on the right of the slide, you can see the average temperature deviation in the main producing regions in the Black Sea region. And you can see that the hottest temperature, the hottest weather, had been seen for the South regions. And South regions are the main producing regions for wheat, both in Russia and Ukraine. And when wheat crop was cut in the southern regions, there is a necessity to move this wheat from the remote, from the far regions, from the center. And actually, this made prices, domestic prices, rise high, they rise rather significant, and actually it takes time to deliver wheat from the central region to the export hubs in the ports. And the main reason for prices to go up, I think, is slow farmer sales. When farmers in many countries observe that prices are rising constantly every day, actually they would like to hold on grains and to wait for even higher price. And that also pushed export prices higher. So, how Black Sea wheat export performs from the start of the current season. As you can see, actually, it's some kind of lagging compared to the last year. But at the same time, I should say that the performance is not very bad. Yeah, it's quite well. We are on the same level as last year, and I would like to point out that Ukraine this year has more share of milling wheat, wheat with 12.5 or 12% protein, and Russia in this year has got larger share of lower protein wheat. I mean 11.5 or something like this. And taking this into consideration, we can see that two countries compete this season again. And you can see this on the charts depicted on the slide. So the chart on the left showed, for example, that the main consumers of Black Sea wheat remain the same. Actually, this is Egypt, yeah. This is Indonesia for Ukrainian wheat. This is Philippines for both countries. But at the same time, we have some new consumers and some new markets who are buying Ukrainian and Russian wheat. First of all, I would like to draw your attention on significant or large volume of wheat shipped from Ukraine to Pakistan. You can see it on the second chart on the slide. Also, we see that Ukraine increased their sales to Morocco because there were some troubles or some constraints with shipment of French wheat. And some North African countries were forced to switch to another regions, and they find this supply in Ukraine. So, as we see, the situation with drought and adverse weather has badly impacted the wheat crop. The situation with spring crops, I mean corn and sunflower seeds, was even worse. So the initial projections for Ukrainian corn crop were record. We saw numbers about 40 million tons of corn crop. But now, when drought actually have done his bad work, we see that crop will be much lower The official figures, the official estimates of Ukrainian Economy Ministry is around 35 million tons. Actually, it's lower than last year, but it's quite good result. But there are some concerns that actually the final numbers for Ukrainian corn crop could be even lower. And this pushed prices up. And there is another supportive factor, as I mentioned, that's China purchases. And you see that corn futures went up too. So this is situation. Actually, I can't avoid speaking here about the sunseed and sunflower oil because in the beginning of the current season, we observed, noticed the unprecedented high prices for sun oil. And that's because of lower crop estimates for both Russia and Ukraine. And the situation is worse because all other countries in the Black Sea region, like Romania and Bulgaria, actually suffered from drought as well. And their numbers are their production numbers are going down. And there is a real shortage of sunflower seed as a raw material to produce sunflower oil. So, what we see in the respect of export prospects. Actually, Black Sea region, despite having lower numbers, lower supply for wheat, lower supply for corn, it for sure to remain one of the important regions to supply grains on the global market. And the situation in this season is starting to pay attention already to focus to the situation with the new crop, which is being planted. And now let me see a little bit what is going on with the planting with the new crop. In this respect, we should have a look at the long-term weather forecast and understand if weather favorable for planting. Actually, it is not, because we are still experiencing a lack of soil moisture in the main producing region, both in Russia and Ukraine. And many farmers are complaining about planting seeds in dry soil, in dry land. But anyway, what could we expect further? Refinitiv weather team produces long-term weather forecasts, and we've already published it for Black Sea region. And as you can see from the charts on this slide, the situation and the predictions for the weather are not so favorable for the winter, because again, Black Sea region and its main producing regions would experience high temperatures, higher than normal, and lower than normal precipitations. And actually, the main crop which is in focus here is winter wheat. Winter wheat with the biggest volume in production and the biggest numbers in yields. So what are our first initial estimates for Black Sea wheat production? We predict that on this time, only on this particular point of time, that overall wheat production in the Black Sea region in the next 2021-22 season will be at the average level, and you will see the figures on my slide. But I can stress again that this is just the initial estimates, and the further plant developments and crop figures, final crop figures, obviously depends on weather. So that's all from my side, what I wanted to tell you about today. Thank you so much for your listening. Hope I will have some questions. And actually, I would like to ask you if you are interested in learning more about Refinitiv agricultural research. If yes, please tick the answer yes and push the button submit. And we will be happy to provide you with more information about our work, our prices, our weather forecast, flaws, or something, or anything you would like to know. So let's give a little time, some time to people who are interested to push two buttons, and we will move forward. And I am giving the floor to my colleague, Worship Mugida, and his outlook about demand side. Thank you so much, Worship. The floor is yours.
Thank you for that presentation. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. I'm going to share with you trade flows for some of the countries we are following closely in the Middle East and Africa. It seems the Middle East and Africa region is largely dependent on grain imports to supplement local production. For instance, in 2019-2020, MEA imported about 85 million tons of wheat, an increase of 41% from 2009 and 2010. Similarly, MEA corn imports expanded by about 65% over the last decade, reaching about 41 million tons in 2018-2019 marketing year. Likewise, in 2019-2020, MEA countries altogether imported almost 16 million tons of barley, an increase of 54% over the past 10 years. This growing dependence on international markets for grains is due to various factors such as relatively strong population growth in countries like Egypt and Nigeria, growing demand for animal feed in countries such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iran, changing consumption patterns in countries such as Kenya, relatively flat local crop production, for example, wheat production in Kenya, South Africa, and Lebanon, scarce water resources limiting crop production, for instance, in Saudi Arabia. Due to these and other reasons, demand for food and animal feed is outpacing local production. As a result, imports are required to supplement the demand unmet by local production. Now, looking at what Refinitiv trade flow models are showing us in terms of Egypt's wheat and corn imports. In Egypt, the relatively strong wheat consumption is largely driven by population growth, which is outpacing local wheat production. Additionally, Egypt is among the countries with the highest wheat wheat consumption per capita in the world. Our trade flow models are indicating that Egypt's year-to-date wheat imports for the current marketing year reached about 1.93 million tons as of August 2020, a 9% decrease from the same period last year and 6% below the 5-year average of about 2 million tons. During the first 2 months of the current marketing year, the Black Sea countries were responsible for about 96% of Egypt's wheat imports. More wheat shipments are expected into the second quarter of the current marketing year, as the General Authority for Supply Commodities purchased 2.345 million tons of Russian wheat, 235,000 tons of Ukrainian wheat, and 60,000 tons of Polish wheat for shipment between September and 30 November 2020. Meanwhile, our trade flow models are forecasting Egypt to import about 1.1 million tons of Black Sea wheat during the first 3 weeks of September. Now looking at corn. Refinitiv trade flow models are suggesting that Egypt's corn imports for the 2019-2020 marketing year could reach about 9.7 million tons, a 4% increase from the same period last year and 7% above the 4-year average of about 9.1 million tons. Additionally, Argentina, Brazil, and Ukraine are altogether expected to be responsible for almost 90% of Egypt's corn imports during the same time frame. Egypt's corn imports are largely driven by demand from the animal feed industry. While the aquaculture and port industries expanded rapidly over the past decade, corn production in Egypt has remained relatively flat over the same period. Egypt's corn production accounts for about 40% of its annual consumption of about 16.5 million tons. Therefore, imports are regularly required to supplement the demand unmet by local production. Our trade flow models are indicating that Turkey imported about 1.86 million tons of wheat during the first quarter of the current marketing year, a 27% decrease from the same period last year and 34% above the 5-year average of 1.34 million tons. During the same period, the Black Sea countries were responsible for about 96% of Turkey's wheat imports. On the other hand, Refinitiv trade flow models are forecasting Turkey to import about 780,000 tons of Black Sea wheat during the first 3 weeks of the current month. Turkey is the largest exporter of wheat flour globally, exporting about 3.3 million tons of flour in 2019. On the other hand, available data is suggesting that Turkey exported about 1.65 million tons of flour between January and July 2020, a 9% decrease from the same time frame last year. In contrast, Turkey exported almost 800,000 tons of pasta between January and July 2020, a 12% increase from the same period last year. This seems to be in line with suggestions of increased consumption of pasta in many countries during the pandemic lockdown. Turkey is the second largest exporter of pasta in the world after Italy. TMO was active in the international wheat markets last marketing year, importing wheat duty-free to stabilize domestic prices. This season, TMO purchased 940,000 tons of wheat for shipment between September and October. Now moving on to corn. In line with the IG's estimates, preliminary data from Refinitiv trade flow models is suggesting that Turkey's corn imports for the 2019-2020 marketing year could reach a historic high of about 4.6 million tons, a 19% increase from the previous marketing year and 71% above the four-year average of 2.68 million tons. The Black Sea countries shipped about 2.7 million tons of corn to Turkey during the 2019-2020 marketing year. And that is like a 14% increase from the previous marketing year and 64% above the four-year average of 1.63 million tons. Although Turkey's corn production expanded by 43% over the past decade, it has been outpaced by the local demand for corn from the animal feed industry. As a result, there has been growing demand for animal feed, especially from the poultry industry. Despite the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, Turkey's poultry meat exports have remained relatively strong. Thus, between January and July 2020, Turkey exported almost 310,000 tons of poultry meat, a 9% increase from the same period last year. Now looking at Saudi Arabia, our trade flow models are indicating that Saudi Arabia's year-to-date wheat imports for the current marketing year reached about 320,000 tons as of August 2020, a substantial decrease of 79% from the same period last year and 58% below the five-year average of 431,000 tons. During the first 2 months of the current marketing year, EU countries accounted for about 60% of Saudi Arabia's wheat imports, with Russia responsible for the balance. On the other hand, our trade flow models are forecasting Saudi Arabia to import about 321,000 tons of Baltic wheat and almost 130,000 tons of Black Sea wheat in September. More wheat shipments are expected in the second quarter of the current season. Thus, the Saudi Grains Organization, SAGO, purchased 745,000 tons of wheat for shipment between November 2020 and January 2021. Although the Saudi government has partially rescinded the ban on domestic wheat production, imports are still critical in supplementing local production. In 2021, local wheat production is expected to account for less than 15% of Saudi Arabia's annual wheat consumption, with imports responsible for the balance. As noted by Refinitiv trade flow models, Saudi Arabia's barley imports during the first 2 months of the current marketing year reached about 1.4 million tons as of August 2020, a 17% increase from the same period last year and 4% below the 3-year average of 1.45 million tons. During the first 2 months of the current season, the Black Sea countries accounted for about 68% of Saudi Arabia's barley imports, with Romania and Germany responsible for the balance. More barley shipments are expected in the second quarter of the current marketing year, with SAGO importing about 1.265 million tons of barley between October and December 2020. However, our trade flow models are suggesting that SAGO's import tenders of 1.68 million tons for the first quarter of the 2020-2021 are 11% below the import volumes during the same time frame last year, and 24% below the 3-year average of 2.21 million tons. Demand and consumption of barley in Saudi Arabia is predominantly affected by the price of processed feed, availability of natural pastures, and the country's animal feed subsidy program. In January 2020, Saudi Arabia made some changes to its animal feed subsidy program, which could potentially have a negative impact on demand for barley, as some farmers could switch to processed animal feed and forage. Consequently, Saudi Arabia's corn imports could remain strong as they are primarily used for animal feed production. Coincidentally, Refinitiv trade flow models are showing Saudi Arabia's corn imports could reach a historic high of about 4.24 million tons during the 2019-2020 marketing year, an 18% increase from the same period last year, and 16% above the 4-year average of about 3.66 million tons. The Americas, that is Argentina, the United States, and Brazil, are expected to have a combined market share of about 97% on Saudi Arabia's corn imports during the 2019-2020 marketing year. Now moving on to Iran. Our trade flow models are showing Iran's corn imports for the 2019-2020 marketing year could reach about 7.4 million tons, an 18% decrease from the same period last year, and 9% below the 3-year average of 8.13 million tons. During the 2019-2020 marketing year, the Black Sea countries and Brazil are expected to dominate corn exports to Iran with a combined market share of about 96%. Meanwhile, Refinitiv trade flow models are forecasting about 630,000 tons of Brazilian corn to reach Iranian shores in October. The slow pace in Iran's corn imports in 2019-2020 seems to be partly due to the US sanctions-related financial challenges that disrupted Iran's grain procurement system, particularly during the first quarter of the current season. On the other hand, the main consumer of imported corn, the poultry industry, is under pressure due to the COVID-19 pandemic that led to subdued export and local demand for poultry meat, particularly from the hospitality industry. Now moving on to Lebanon. Refinitiv trade flow models are showing Lebanon's year-to-date wheat imports for the current marketing year reached almost 154,000 tons as of August 2020, a 38% decrease from the same period last year and almost 50% below the 3-year average of 300,000 tons. Likewise, Refinitiv trade flow models are suggesting that Lebanon could import about 600,000 tons of corn during the 2019-2020 marketing year, a 30% decrease from the same period last year and about 40% below the 2-year average of 1 million tons. Our trade flow models are suggesting that about 40,000 tons of Black Sea wheat could reach Lebanese shores during the first 3 weeks of September. Lebanon's wheat and corn imports are sluggish, largely due to the economic and financial challenges facing the country. The situation has been worsened by the recent explosion at the port of Beirut, damaging grain silos with storage capacity of 120,000 metric tons. In Lebanon, consumers are under pressure amid the pandemic. As noted by the World Bank, by the end of 2019, about 45% of Lebanese were living in poverty. The situation has been worsened by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent measures imposed to slow down the spread of the coronavirus, which could potentially push more households deeper into poverty. Now moving to East Africa. Kenya's wheat imports have almost doubled over the past decade to meet demand unmet by local production. Thus, Refinitiv trade flow models are showing that Kenya's wheat imports for the 2019-2020 marketing year reached about 2.25 million tons, 11% increase from the previous marketing year, and 17% above the two-year average of 1.92 million tons. As noted by Refinitiv trade flow models, Kenya imported almost 240,000 tons of Russian wheat during the first 2 months of the current marketing year, a significant drop of almost 50% from the same period last year and 31% below the three-year average of 350,000 tons. Furthermore, Kenya's imports could remain sluggish in September, as Refinitiv trade flow models are forecasting Kenya to import about 133,000 tons of wheat during the same month. However, imports could pick up during the season because imports are an integral supplement in the Kenyan market and account for about 85% of the total annual wheat consumption of 2.3 million tons. Overall, wheat imports are expected to be relatively flat in 2020-2021 marketing year, as the impacts of the pandemic could result in soft local demand for wheat. Nigeria's annual wheat consumption increased by about 40% over the past decade, largely due to population growth. In contrast, production declined by about 40% over the same time frame. Nigeria produces only 60,000 tons of wheat per annum for about 210 million people. So imports are required to supplement local production and account for more than 95% of the total annual wheat consumption of approximately 5 million tons. Refinitiv trade flow models are indicating that Nigeria could import about 1.44 million tons of wheat during the first quarter of the current marketing year, a 2% decrease from the same period last year and 10% above the two-year average of 1.31 million tons. As for South Africa, our trade flow models are indicating South Africa's wheat imports summed up to about 1.95 million tons during the 2019-2020 marketing year, a 26% increase from the previous marketing year and 18% above the three-year average of 1.65 million tons. During the 2019-2020 season, the EU countries and the Black Sea countries dominated wheat exports to South Africa with a combined market share of almost 90%. Imports could slow down in 2020-2021 as South Africa is projected to produce about 1.8 million tons of wheat during the same season. Furthermore, local demand for wheat is expected to remain soft due to a sluggish economy, COVID-19 pandemic, and availability of relatively cheap substitutes. Affordability is an important consideration in a country with a pre-pandemic unemployment rate of about 30% and about 25% of the population lives below the poverty line. Nonetheless, imports are an integral supplement in the South African market and account for about 50% of the total annual wheat consumption of almost 3.5 million tons. As concluding remarks, during the current marketing year, some MENA countries such as Egypt and Saudi Arabia could continue maintaining relatively strong strategic wheat reserves amid the pandemic, while other countries like Sudan and Tunisia could maintain relatively flat imports to supplement local production. Likewise, demand for animal feed, especially from poultry industries, could support corn imports for countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. In Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria, wheat consumption could be soft due to the impacts of the pandemic lockdowns, like job losses and loss of income. Furthermore, depreciating currencies could potentially drive up the cost of imports. On the other hand, unemployment rates are expected to remain stubbornly high in Nigeria and South Africa. With that, I would like to kindly ask you to let us know if you are interested in learning more about Refinitiv agriculture research by putting your answer on the pop-ups on your screen before we move on to the questions and answer segment.
Okay, thank you so much, Worship, for your part of presentation. It was very interesting to know what's going on in the countries who are consuming Black Sea grains. Actually, I would like to pick up one question, and it was very interesting. It was a question about the high temperatures and very hot weather in Russia's southern regions and necessity to bring wheat to export from central regions. Yes, actually, this became some kind of challenge, some sort of challenge to Russian exporters to transport wheat from far remote regions from the south ports. And there are some other particularities which also promoted grain prices, wheat prices to rise. First of all, Russia has started monitoring the norms of weight, cargo weight, transported by trucks. And as a result of this, the cargo flow grain cargo flow to southern port declined, and at the same time, the cost of grains transportation increased. And market participants stated that the hike in grain transportation costs was around 25-35%. It's just a huge number. And there is another point, another significant, very important point to be mentioned in respect of Russia or wheat prices and its origination costs. Since the start of October, a majority actually of southern port terminals, I speak about Novorossiysk, Tamань, Tuapse, which are the biggest grain export hubs for Russian grains, to increase their foreign costs. So it's actually is the reason. These are the additional reasons for Russian wheat prices to rise further. Worship, do you have any questions to pick up?
It seems most of the questions have been answered. I would like to ask our audience if they could put on the question in the question and answer box if they've got any questions.
Okay, so actually I've answered all the questions which was addressed to me. So what about to thank our audience for their attention, for their questions, for their efforts, and for their interest to join our webinar and to get more information about us, our work, and what we do. Thank you so much again. Yes, we're happy to share with you our insight, our knowledge, and we'll be happy to do it again soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.